Hi, if you want to discover how common people are doing the uncommon and how you too can transform your future in your present, you absolutely need to see this interview. Dr. Joe Dispenza is a New York Times best-selling author of 4 books, including his latest, Becoming Supernatural. He is a scientist, researcher, and teacher who has educated thousands of people around the world with a deep passion for exploring how people can use findings from neuroscience and quantum physics not only to heal illness, but also to enjoy a more fulfilled and happy life. Dr. Joe is convinced that each one of us has the potential for greatness and unlimited abilities. It's an honor and my joy to have here with us today Dr. Joe Dispenza. Hi, Dr. Joe, how are you? Welcome.
Thank you, Ellie. I'm very happy to be with you.
We're so happy you're here with us today, and we're so looking forward from everything that we're gonna learn from you today. So let's go and start. Oh, and I'm just gonna say that we're gonna focus this interview in your latest book, Becoming Supernatural, and we're gonna start off with asking you, why did you write this book?
Well, I wrote the book, Ali, because common people around the world are doing the uncommon. They're healing themselves of very serious health conditions. They're creating new jobs, new careers, new opportunities, new relationships in their lives. They're healing from childhood emotional traumas and scars. And they're having mystical and transcendental experiences that transcend language to the point that they could never go back to being the same person again. And the beauty behind it is that they look just like you and I, that they're just a common person. And in the last 5 years, I've done extensive measurements on quantifying subjective changes in people's minds and in their hearts and in their bodies. And being able to quantify those subjective experiences objectively has proven to me that it's absolutely possible. And if you give people the proper information, and science is the contemporary language of mysticism. Science is what demystifies the mystical. Exactly. And you can combine some latest research in quantum physics and neuroscience and epigenetics and psychoneuroimmunology. All of those sciences point the finger at possibility. But once people understand the what and the why, the how starts to get easier. So imagine when we set out on this journey with my research team, I never had any idea that we would be recording some of the measurements that we've recorded, whether it's been changes in gene expression, whether it's been changes in the immune system, whether it's changes in the energy of the room, whether it's significant and profound changes in coherence in the brain and amounts of energy in the brain that have really rocked the scientific community. And you don't have to be a Buddhist monk, and you don't have to be a nun or a priest or a rabbi or a scholar.
That's exactly what I say, yeah.
That's beautiful because anybody can do it.
Exactly. And that's actually what's going to be my next question. These measurements that you've been doing with your students for the last 5 years, can you please share with us so that the audience everyone watching can understand what is it that you were measuring and what are the key findings?
Sure. Well, we've done probably over 8,000 brain scans, over 19 advanced workshops in the last 5 years. And we've measured people's brains like when they come to a 4-day or 4.5-day intensive workshop, we'll call it an advanced workshop, and they go through many, many different practices. And at the end of 4.5 days, we remeasure their brain. And I want to know that the changes aren't just in their mind, they're in their brain. So we've done statistical quantitative EEG studies. We've measured brains in real time, like if you're in the midst of some type of discipline or some type of practice, it's important for us to see how your brain's doing in that process. And it's allowed us to gather more information based on the inner workings of a person's mind to be able to teach transformation a little bit better. And so, as an example, the first 2 advanced workshops we did, we had over 90% of the people have more than an 80% change in their brain for the better, just in 4 days.
Wow.
We've measured levels of energy in the brain that have never been recorded in the history of neuroscience, and the arousal that's created from that inner event is not coming from a typical way the brain gets aroused, like from a stressor in your environment, like a predator or a car accident or trauma. That kind of arousal is survival, but when it comes from inside the body and up into the brain, it tends to be correlated with levels of ecstasy, levels of bliss, and levels of love and joy that really are transcendental for most people. And when you have an inner event that feels that way, you're going to pay attention to whatever's going on in your mind. And that's how we begin to reorganize circuitry and we begin to change the body. So the levels of coherence in the brain are absolutely outstanding. People are so connected and their brains are functioning at such a higher degree that there goes the anxiety, there goes the depression, there goes the cyclic mood problems, there goes the pain. They get a biological upgrade. And we've measured heart coherence. You know, it turns out when you feel frustration and impatience and resentment, your heart beats very incoherently. And when you feel gratitude, love, and joy and inspiration, your heart begins to beat more regularly, and it sends a very strong signal to the brain, and it acts as an amplifier for the brain to have more energy. So we've measured that. We've measured genetic changes, and
yeah, that's actually what I want to ask you, because you also, I mean, it's just amazing how much changes you have in your life. And one of them that you also studied, you had this year, you were studying gene regulation, right? And one of these changes in our genes, expression. So could you please just continue on that line to share with us?
sure. I mean, most people think that genes create disease and that they're going to be, you know, they're doomed to their genes, and it's actually not the truth. I mean, your body's a protein producing machine, and proteins are responsible for the structure and the function of your body. And in order for the body to make a protein, a gene has to be regulated. So skin cells make skin proteins, muscle cells make muscle proteins, stomach cells make stomach proteins called enzymes, muscle cells make muscle proteins called actin and myosin. Your immune system makes immune proteins like antibodies and immunoglobulins, and they're all responsible for the structure and function of your body. And so in order for a gene, the cell to make a protein, a gene has to be activated. So genes are like Christmas tree lights. They're turning on and off all the time. But if people are living by routine, living by the same emotional states, reacting to the same conditions in their environment, not learning anything new, not creating new experiences, not making any different choices, their genes stay the same because there's no information coming from their environment that can signal the gene to make a new protein. So we said, okay, let's measure 7,500 different gene expressions.
Wow.
And let's see if we can get 35 randomly selected people to retreat from their life for just 4.5 days and begin to think differently, begin to make new choices, begin to do different things, have new experiences, and feel differently if we're able to change any gene expression. And we've also witnessed tumors and cancers diminish in our workshops. So in order for that to happen, it's not magic. There's got to be a gene that's involved in that, right? So at the end of 4 days, we found 8 genes in common that were upregulated in those 35 people. Now, they had their own genes that they also upregulated, but the ones that were common amongst those 8 people had to do with the suppression of cancer cells and tumors in the body, neurogenesis, the growth of new neurons in response to learning new things and having novel experiences, the gene that activates stem cells to go to damaged tissues and cells and aging tissues and repair them, the gene for oxidative stress to help fight aging and heart disease and cancer, the gene for immune activation, the gene to strengthen cellular structures. Just in 4 days, we're all upregulated. Imagine if you did that for 2 weeks, what would happen?
Or constantly.
Yes.
You know, as a habit. I want to make a parenthesis here, Dr. Joe, because, you know, you have a passion and a love for researching and for bridging scientific knowledge with spiritual knowledge. And I really want to thank you, because most of these things, people like me that study the spiritual side, they make common sense and they feel like the truth. But for so many people, I would say the majority of people in the world, to have the scientific approval and all these findings that you do really does opens a door for them to accept these truths and to then be willing to put them into practice and live happier lives. So I really want to thank you for your work and for what you do for our world. And that was just like a parenthesis, but let's move on so people can know more about what you do. So there's one chapter in your new book where you talk about the present moment, and you have a different take on it that I actually completely agree with, and I would love it if you could share it with everyone watching.
Sure. I think that most people wake up in the morning and they search for the familiar feeling called themselves. Now, feelings and emotions are a record of the past, and we can remember experiences better because we can remember how they feel. The stronger your emotional reaction to some event in your life, the more you pay attention to the cause in your outer world, and the brain takes a snapshot, and that's called a memory. So as a person starts to search for familiar feelings of unhappiness and suffering and guilt and shame and discouragement, every one of those emotions is connected to memories that are mapped in their brain because their brain is a record of the past. Mm-hmm. So they start thinking about certain people and things at certain times and places. The memory is activated, the body starts feeling certain emotions. And if you think about that, how you think and how you feel creates your state of being. That thoughts are the language of the brain and feelings are the language of the body. Then a person's entire state of being when they start their day is in their past. So now, from a biological standpoint, that means then their past should begin to create the same future. So then if they wake up in the morning and they get out of bed on the same side and they go to the bathroom and brush their teeth and then use the toilet and then make themselves a cup of coffee and then go to the shower and then get dressed and eat breakfast and drive to work. And they've done this, I don't know, let's say 10 years. Mm-hmm. It makes sense that if a habit is a redundant set of automatic and unconscious thoughts, behaviors, and emotions that's acquired through repetition, it means now their body's on autopilot. And it's dragging them into a predictable future based on what they've done in their past. And now they've lost their free will to the program. And so then finding the present moment means then that you have to get beyond the conditions in your external environment, the memories of people and things and places that are mapped in your brain, beyond your emotions and habits in your body, and literally get beyond the predictable future, the familiar past, and surrender into that present moment. And when people do this effectively, there's significant changes in their brain, there's significant changes in their heart, there's significant changes in their biology just from relaxing into the present moment. So it's a skill. And if where you place your attention is where you place your energy, if you're truly in the present moment, then it makes sense you have a lot of energy in the present moment. But if you're thinking about your cell phone and all the problems in your life and the people and things you have to do, then you're mismanaging your energy and your attention is going in all different directions and you have no energy to heal. You have no energy to create a new life because all your energy is moving away from you. So teaching people how to take their power back and find the present moment actually begins to build their own electromagnetic field. And now, when you're in the present moment, according to the quantum model of reality, all possibilities exist in the eternal now. So now they're ready to create a new life because they're not in their familiar life and their familiar personality. They're in a whole different state. We call that getting beyond themselves.
Yeah, and into a world of possibility. And there's so much talk now about the heart, Dr. Joe, but you also talk a lot about this, and it's part of your work, all this that you call heart coherence. And I think for creating this new future that you were talking about, this new life, can you please share with us how important is the heart in your work?
Well, it's amazing, Ali, because over the last 15 years or so, the discoveries that I've been making in teaching people how to create a better life, that it's a combination of two elements, a coherent brain and a coherent heart. A coherent brain tends to reflect a very clear intention of something that a person wants to experience in their future. The more clear you get on what you want in your future, the more you know the direction you're headed. But that's a mindful, brainful process. So then, when you combine that clear intention with an elevated emotion, and you start to feel joy, you start to feel gratitude, you start to feel appreciation, you start to feel inspired, enthusiastic, that elevated emotion tends to activate your heart. And if you're going to believe in a future that you're imagining with all of your heart, then it better be open and activated. And it turns out that you can teach people how to begin to create that level of heart coherence. So when a person begins to feel more heart-centered, they start to feel like their future has already happened. And if you're feeling like your future has already happened, you're less likely to live in lack and desperation and fear and anger and frustration and resentment, or trying to control or force an outcome in your life because you feel like it's already happened. So teaching people how to regulate those internal states independent of the conditions in their external environment becomes a habit. So once it becomes a habit, you would say, God, I'm never going to react to Mexico City traffic. If I'm feeling this feeling, I'm just going to keep trusting and I'm going to keep going. I'm not going to get angry at the news because I don't want to lose this feeling. I don't want to hold a grudge against a family member or a coworker because I'd rather feel this way. So people start to trust their heart more. But when they're living in survival states of anger and frustration and aggression and fear and anxiety and guilt and shame and suffering, those emotional states shut the heart down. So you don't want to open your heart when you're living in survival, and living in survival is living in stress. So I want our students to be able to make it a skill, and I want them to be able to know when they're there and when they're not. And if you combine that clear intention with an elevated emotion, it begins to change a person's energy. And when you change your energy, you change your life.
Exactly.
And the opposite's also true, is that if you don't change your energy, you'll never change. And I know that just from witnessing it enough.
Exactly. And that's very much in line to what I teach. I always talk about what makes you live a high vibe. That's why I call it a high vibe life versus a low vibe. And then it has to do a lot with what you're saying, Dr. Joe. So yeah, it is very interesting and very powerful. I want to now move on to also in your book, you talk about the difference between time space and space time. And I know it can be a little bit complicated for some, but if you could briefly share with us, what do you mean by that?
Well, think about this. We live in a three-dimensional reality, right? And in a three-dimensional reality, everything has height and depth and width. And you experience that three-dimensional reality with your senses. And your senses actually plug you into the external environment. If you couldn't see, you couldn't hear, you couldn't smell, you couldn't taste, you couldn't feel, you couldn't experience your outer world. There's just no connection to it. So in order for us to engage in three-dimensional reality, we need our senses. And this is the realm of space-time, because space-time is defined by everything material. It's matter, it's particles, it's bodies, it's people, it's things, it's places, it's objects, it's time. And we experience time because we experience separation. There's me here and there's you there. And because there's space and time between us, we're separate. But there's also me here and my dreams and my goals way over there. And because I'm here and my future's there, I'm experiencing separation from my future. So in order for me to get what I want, I got to get up from one point of consciousness here that I'm aware of and go to my goals and dreams in my future, which is another point of consciousness. And the separation between 2 points of consciousness creates time. So now I have to get up and drag my body through space, and when I take it through space, I'm going to experience time. So time is defined as the separation between 2 points of consciousness. Now, throw in the hormones of stress, they actually excite our senses and cause us to become materialists, to narrow our focus on matter, on objects, on bodies, on people, on things, because that's where the danger is. So the more people live in stress, the more they live in survival, the more they feel like they're matter trying to change matter, because they're robbing their body's invisible field of light and information and turning it into chemistry. And when they do that, the field around their body begins to shrink, and now they're lower vibe. Now they're feeling more density. So if you're feeling more density, then you got to compete. You got to manipulate. You got to fight for it. You got to try. You got to wish. You got to hope, because you're matter trying to change matter. So you'll get your dreams. You'll get your new house. You'll get your new car. You'll get your new wardrobe. But it's going to take you 20 years to get it, because you're going to have to drag your body back and forth through work, and it's going to take time. Mm-hmm. So in the realm of space-time, Allie, in this three-dimensional world, if you got really big and you start looking at how big space is, you can see that space is eternal. Space is infinite. It goes on forever. And you experience time as you move through space. That's the material three-dimensional world. Now, that's the realm of the somebody, the someone, the something, the somewhere, sometime. Mm-hmm. Our research shows that there's a bridge that you have to traverse to get to that realm of the unified field or the quantum field. And that is the moment you become nobody, no one, no thing, nowhere, and no time, you take your attention off your body. You take attention off the people in your life, the things you own, the places you go, and time itself. That is the moment you become pure consciousness. Now, that's the bridge, that's the nexus of the quantum. Now, the quantum field or the unified field, it is an invisible field of energy and information that you can't see with your senses. It's beyond your senses. Mm-hmm. Just because you can't see something doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Exactly. You can't experience that realm with your senses. There's only one thing left that you can experience it with, and that's your awareness. Now, right now as we're talking, you're unaware of your nose, but it exists.
Right.
If I ask you to put your attention on it and become aware of it, now you're aware of it, but it's always existed. Well, the field is the same way. If you don't put any attention on it, then it doesn't exist for you. But the moment you put your attention on it, all of a sudden you become aware of it. So then, as you teach people then to surrender into this unified field, to connect with it, to pay attention to it, to stay present with it. Here they are. Here's the consciousness of the unified field. Here they are now as nobody, no one, no thing, nowhere, and no time. They're in the eternal present moment. As they begin to surrender to it, one point of consciousness and another point of consciousness, you're now bringing them closer together. So if you bring 2 points of consciousness closer together, you have less time and you have less separation. And if you're getting closer and closer to it, things should appear in your life faster. You're collapsing time, and the event or the experience is going to be drawn to you. Now, that's fifth-dimensional creation, and the closer you are to the unified field, the faster the frequency, the less time it takes for it to appear in your life. And so people who connect have instantaneous healings. They get their hearing back, not once, not twice, more than that. They have biological upgrades in their diseases. All of a sudden, they connect to that field of energy, and it happens in no time because they created it from no time.
Exactly. And that takes us very nicely into my next question, which is, you also talk about in your book about mystical experiences and the pineal gland. And I would love it if you could share, what is the connection between the two?
Well, it's a great question, because all of a sudden now you have to leave the realm of physics, right? Because in that realm of the quantum, you have an infinite amount of time. Time is eternal. In this three-dimensional reality, space is eternal, but in the quantum, time is eternal. So imagine one long now, infinite amount of time. How much can you get done? If you had all the time in the world, you can get everything done. Mm-hmm. So there's infinite possibilities. Well, that's the quantum. So now, if there's infinite possibilities, then there's unknown possibilities that you and I haven't thought about. So now, if there are other dimensions that exist, if there's other realms that you can experience with your senses but exist as dimensions, or what quantum physics calls the multi-worlds theory, then in order for you to go from the physics realm into the biological realm, there has to be latent systems in place that connect our biology to that field. And the pineal gland is that little transducer that allows us to take frequency, just like a television antenna, and turn it into a picture The pineal gland takes frequency that's beyond the speed of light and turns it into profound imagery the same way a television antenna takes frequency and turns it into a picture. Now, the pineal gland has been called the third eye.
Mm-hmm.
In actuality, it's the first eye. Because when the pineal gland gets activated, it does something really amazing. It takes the nighttime neurotransmitter called melatonin and gives it an upgrade. What melatonin typically does, which creates dreaming and repairs the body and relaxes the body and causes the body to heal, all of a sudden now melatonin gets an upgrade, and all of a sudden it creates powerful antioxidants that heal more. It creates chemicals that cause us to dream lucidly. It causes the body to go into deeper levels of repair and restoration, that all of a sudden energy in the brain is activated to a greater degree. And now the person's inner experience is more real than anything they've ever experienced in their outer world. They're having a full-on sensory experience without using their senses. They're sitting there in a meditation. They're not using their senses, but it's more real than anything they've experienced. So if your senses were heightened right now by 25%, everything you're seeing, smelling, tasting, feeling, hearing, your awareness of the environment would be heightened. And you can't have awareness without consciousness. Consciousness is awareness. And you can't have consciousness without energy. So the brain all of a sudden goes into this activated energetic state. And in a matter of seconds, whatever's going on in the person's inner world begins to reorganize and rewire their brain, and then sends a new emotional signature to their body, and they are changed forever. They're creating a long-term memory, and that long-term memory now becomes a change in their circuitry and their gene expression, and their spectrum of reality will broaden because now their brain is wired to perceive what has always existed, but they didn't have the circuits in place to see.
That is just amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that, Dr. Joe. And actually, when you change yourself, you also change the world, right? The consciousness of the planet. And you have this project Coherence where you do group meditations. Can you please share with us, why did you started this, and how is it that they can change the consciousness of the planet?
Well, this is a very interesting conversation, and we've been doing studies with groups of people in our advanced workshops where we take 750 people and we teach them how to create heart coherence. And when the heart gets coherent and it starts beating in a rhythmic fashion, and we partner with the Heart Math Institute, when the heart gets to become coherent, it produces a measurable magnetic signature that can be up to 3 meters wide from the body, measurable. So now the person's emitting energy, and all frequency is energy, and all frequency carries information. So laying the intent on that energy for the greatest good of everybody wearing the heart rate monitor sitting in the front of the room, that their lives be enriched, their bodies be healed, that their dreams come true, that the mystical find them. What we noticed was that when there came a moment where many of those people wearing the heart rate monitor, all of their hearts went into coherence at the exact same time, the exact same day, the exact same meditation. Now, that is a non-local phenomenon that transcends space-time. Wow. Now you're talking a quantum phenomenon, which means if I'm going into heart coherence, and I know how to do this really well, and it's causing you to go into heart coherence, and your husband and your family and your parents are all connected to you in a relationship, and all of a sudden they start going into heart coherence, it means then that on some level you're creating changes in people's autonomic nervous system for them to feel more safe, more loving, more whole. And we thought, God, if we've seen such dramatic results in our workshops, is it possible then that we could begin to change the world by doing group meditation? So we've done 4 Project Coherence meditations, peace gathering projects. The last one we did had over 42,000 people participate in that particular global meditation. And I want to keep doing them because I do think that on some measure and in some way, we can begin to produce profound changes.
For sure, definitely. And I know that a lot of people watching are very interested in going deeper into your work. And for that, I can absolutely recommend your week-long advanced workshops. But can you please share with everyone watching, what are these workshops?
Well, we've done 19 advanced workshops, Ellie, and the advanced workshops were just a great way for people to retreat from their lives for 4.5 days and begin to disconnect from the family and their friends and their phones and their computers and their jobs and start changing their inner states. And what we noticed was that on the fourth and the third day, so many people had so many miraculous and significant quantum changes that I thought, my goodness, I got to send them home now. What if I had them for 3 more days?
Mm-hmm.
What could we do if we went for a whole week? What type of supernatural changes can we begin to produce as a field effect? So I just stopped teaching all the progressive workshops, which are the courses that we typically teach on the weekends that are a Friday night, all day Saturday and Sunday, and now we're making that an online course so that people don't have to travel to Mexico City or to Austin, Texas, or to London or Berlin or wherever, that they can get the material from the comfort of their own home.
Perfect.
The 4-day advanced workshops where we've done all the measurements because we have a lot of data. And I just want to focus on a week-long event and take people further than where they've ever gone before and give people a real opportunity to immerse themselves in the material and in the content and set it up so that they have an experience they'll never forget for the rest of their lives. So I'm just changing the structure because I believe this is a time in history where it's not enough to know. This is a time in history to know how. And I think when you teach people the what and the why, the how gets easier, and you get a group of people together that have that same ambition and that same passion, you move mountains, and that's what I'm about.
Yeah, that's perfect, and that's amazing for everyone that can go, and everyone that want to learn more about you, your work, your events. They can visit your website, drjoedispenza.com. And also for people in Mexico that are watching, they can get your books in Spanish at edicionesuranomexico.com. And I think there's a lot that they can learn from you. You were recently here in Mexico City, and I know you'll come back, at some point. And we will be as happy as always to have you, Dr. Joe. And I really, really, really want to thank you for your work, for everything you do, and your passion for research, because you do help make our world a better one. So
thank you so much, Allie, and thank you for all that you do, because you obviously do the same.
thank you, Dr. Joe. It has been a pleasure, really.